The Golden Horde, the testament of Genghis Khan. I command you to go on a military campaign, cross the Volga and Ural rivers, reach Kiev and beyond to the final sea, conquer 11 countries and their peoples, the Bulgarians, the Hungarians, the Russians and the Kipchaks, from the legend of Genghis Khan. This melody is performed every hour, both night and day, in each of the 4 cardinal directions. It has been performed for several hundred years, and it ends abruptly before being completed. This story began thousands of kilometers away from Krakow. A famous Mongolian legend, Genghis Khan left a testament that the hooves of the Mongolian horse should be washed in the final sea, where there is no further land and no one else to conquer. The final sea is the Atlantic Ocean, as was thought at that time. Did Genghis Khan's descendants manage to fulfill his wishes? And why did Batu Khan's Western European campaign start and end in the Kipchak steppe? How was the Golden Horde's territory formed? And, as strange as it may seem, what does the Krakow musician have to do with it? Was Genghis Khan's testament broken? Psychologically, none could imagine a situation in which they could violate his testament. How did the Golden Horde start? This steppe was filled with the Kipchaks. And how did the story of the Krakow trumpeter end? He was shot by a Mongol arrow. An interrupted melody and an interrupted military campaign. A strong-willed people, the story of more than one revenge, and the curse that was lifted. The direction is to the west, the Golden Horde and the testament of Genghis Khan. Chapter 1. A Royal Campaign. The army headed out from Signac and went west. 33 military units, 10,000 soldiers each, formed such a wide column that it would take 3 days to go from the left to the right side of the Mongolian army. Vasily Yan, Batu Khan. The military campaign was given a lot of attention. Based on the number of the royal soldiers, there were at least 11 sons and grandsons of Genghis Khan. For this reason, the Western campaign can be referred to as truly royal. However, according to the secret history of the Mongols, those who took part called it the Kipchak campaign. We associate the rise of the Kipchaks on the world stage with the Mongol invasions. However, the Mongol Kipchak story had begun even before the birth of Genghis Khan. The deepest and cleanest lake in the world is Baikal. In Turkic, this means a rich or a sacred lake. The Bargazin River flows into the northeastern part of Lake Baikal. Genghis Khan's mother is said to be from this place. It's similar to the Trojan War, only bigger in scale and covering half of the world. According to one version of events, the Borjigins, a Mongol tribe, were at war with the Merkits for many years. The Karays have a large tribe called the Merkits. The Mongolian leader Yesugai kidnapped the beautiful Merkit woman Oylun, who would be the mother of Genghis Khan. Some years later, the Merkits took revenge and kidnapped Borta, Genghis Khan's wife. The leader of the Merkits forced Genghis Khan's wife into marriage. We will commit blood feud. We will destroy all Merkits. Sweetheart Bota will return. We will avenge our righteousness. The secret history of the Mongols. She returned pregnant, but despite this, Genghis Khan adopted Jochi. More precisely, he accepted Jochi as his son. Allegedly, Bota was pregnant even before captivity, and then Genghis Khan dealt with the Merkits. The remains of this tribe fled to the Kipchaks. According to one version of events, the Merkits were related to them. By then, Temujin had already been made a Khan. The year 1206 was when Temujin was proclaimed as Khan of all Mongols by the name of Chinggis. He was called the Man of Iron Will. Genghis Khan did not forgive those who gave refuge to the Merkits. His empire needed to grow, while the Kipchak steppe was spacious with fertile meadows. A further story tells of a Kipchak ruler that plundered a caravan in Otrar and killed the merchants. According to Genghis Khan's Yasa, or Code of Laws, this crime was unforgivable. By the 1320s, the territory of Kazakhstan was captured by Genghis Khan's forces. Around the same time, Genghis Khan divided the occupied lands between the four sons of his wife Bota. Chagatai was given Transoxiano and Jetisu. Tolui received Mongolia. Ogadai became his heir, the Great Khagan, and ruled from his base in China. The eldest son, Jochi, inherited part of the Kipchak steppe. He deliberately sent Jochi to these lands to allow him to be amongst his relatives. Genghis Khan also ordered the eldest son to expand his territories by moving further to the west, but Jochi dragged his feet and delayed the campaign. Shortly after this, Jochi passed away. Genghis Khan himself died not long after. In general, the era of Genghis Khan sparked worldwide globalization, which came from Asia and from the countries of the East. At the council meeting in 1235, a decision was made to fulfill Genghis Khan's testament and follow in the footsteps of the Kipchaks by reaching the final sea. The lands to be conquered were to become part of Jochi's domain. Jochi's son Batu led the campaign. According to Mongolian principles, all the nomads who lived here on the territory of the Eurasian steppe were declared subjects of the Mongol Empire, and those who fled were naturally seen as traitors and needed to be returned. The 11 nations to be conquered were mentioned in the testament of Genghis Khan. Among them, of course, are the Kipchaks, and all who were somehow connected with them, such as the Alans, the Cherkess, the Bulgarians, the Hungarians, and the Russians. How did the Mongols conquer cities? How did the Battle of Kiev end? Who refused to travel to the west? Chapter 2. The Gateway to Europe. Now called the Golden Gates, these were formerly known as the Southern Gates and were built in 1164. In the 12th century, it was the only entrance to the city. Genghis Khan designated Kiev as a priority target. It seemed that he took particular interest in the Russian princes. They were too close to the Kipchaks and sometimes joined forces to oppose the Mongols. The Battle of the Kalka River took place in 1223. According to the old Russian chronicles, the Poloptsians fled to Kiev, asking for protection, and claimed that the Mongols would first beat the Kievites and then the Russians. The Mongols sent emissaries to the Russians, saying that they did not wish to fight, but wanted the Poloptsians, also known as the Kipchaks. The princes killed the emissaries. The Russian-Kipchak alliance itself suffered a complete collapse due to inconsistency of action and mutual distrust. The Mongol Tatars won this battle and realized that they could now take on an already divided Russia. 13 years later, the Mongols returned to finish what they had started. But first they defeated the Volga Bulgarians. Russia's turn came in 1237, when they captured Ryazan, Kolomna, and Moscow. Referred to as evil cities by the Mongolians, they did not submit immediately. For example, why was Ryazan destroyed? Because the Ryazan prince killed the Mongolian emissaries. But if their power was recognized, the city usually survived. The walls of the ancient Kremlin did not witness that invasion. They were rebuilt several times, but the besieged defended themselves vehemently for 5 days. For the Mongols, it was merely a short chapter. 24 cities were destroyed. Others surrendered without resistance. According to the Mongolian code, the cities that obeyed voluntarily were called good cities. The Mongols levied a moderate indemnity by taking horses and food from them. Lev Gumilyov, Ancient Russia and the Great Steppe. On average, taxes surpassed 50% and even 60% and more. Scouts and informants were sent before capturing the territory to tell the general public that the tax would only be 10%. Fire, the sword, and cunning diplomacy were put to use, and once they had conquered the Principality of Chernigov, they approached their primary target, Kiev. Chernigov princes from the Olgovich branch had initially had close and friendly contacts with the Kipchaks. In 1240, Batu Khan sent his emissaries to Mikhail Chernigov. The prince killed the emissaries and fled to Hungary, the Ipatiev Chronicle. He fled to Hungary, where the Kipchak prince Kotyan, defeated by Batu's troops, had also gone. This place was also a target in the testament of Genghis Khan. But first, they needed Kiev, where Prince Daniil of Galicia was on the throne. On the eve of the siege, he went to see the Hungarian king again. December 1240. The city was quickly captured. For the Christian world of Western Europe, it was absolutely incomprehensible how rapidly the Russian principalities fell. It turns out that with the capture of Kiev, the main objectives set out by the council were completed. With the Polovtsians defeated and Russia conquered, all were ready to return home. From the Kipchak campaign, Batu sent Ugadai Khan a secret report. By the power of eternal heaven, we have subjugated these countries and peoples to your will, and, intending to turn our golden reigns homeward, have decided to arrange a farewell feast, the secret history of the Mongols. But at this feast, cousins Batu and Guyuk had a disagreement, and only some of the princes headed east. Batu, who seemed to have wanted to turn the golden reigns homeward, went west. Why? Was this decision spontaneous, or had the grandson of Genghis Khan planned in advance to reach the final sea? The gates of Europe were open. The first target was Poland. By that time, Mikhail Chernigovsky, who had killed the emissaries, had fled there. His grandfather had been a Polish prince. Why didn't Poland and Hungary become part of the Golden Horde? Was Genghis Khan's testament violated? And what sea became the final one for the Mongols? Chapter 3. Towards the Final Sea. Poland's Hejnal Mariacki, or St. Mary's trumpet call. The sound is heard across the market square of Krakow. This is one of Krakow's main traditions. The music is performed from St. Mary's Church. Hejnal, as strange as it may seem, is a Hungarian word meaning dawn. This melody would be played at sunrise and sunset, as a sign to open and close the city gate, as well as in case of fire or danger. Legend has it that the trumpeter who guarded Krakow from the church tower caught sight of the Mongols' approach. He began to sound his horn, but was struck down by a Mongol arrow. Interestingly, there is an addendum to this legend. It is said that Batu's warriors believed that the killing of the trumpeter had placed a curse upon them, but more on that later. The year is 1241. Batu's primary goal is to defeat the Poles to prevent their alliance with the Hungarians, and to punish Mikhail Chernigovsky and the Kipchaks who had fled. After capturing Kievan Rus, the Mongols turned their attention to Hungary, with 2 military units going there and 1 heading towards Poland. They captured Krakow, destroyed almost all the city buildings, but St. Andrew's Church survived the attack. The decisive Battle of Legnica then followed, where the anti-Mongolian coalition were destroyed and the Polish king was killed. At the same time, the rest of the army marched successfully through Bulgaria, Croatia, Czechia and Hungary. There were only a few large battles, one of them on the Shayo River when the Hungarians were defeated, and another in Legnica when the Poles and Germans were defeated and Budapest was captured. Back in 1236, Batu sent a message to Bela IV asking him to capitulate, and complained that the Hungarian ruler had not responded for the 30th time. Furthermore, Bela was alleged to have also killed Mongolian emissaries. Hungary was conquered by the beginning of 1242, and the king fled. The victors appointed a tax collector in the kingdom, and coins were soon minted on behalf of the Great Khan. However, Hungary did not become part of the Mongol Empire, and neither did Poland. The territory was already huge, and it had to be controlled. We will reach the final sea, and then the entire universe will be at our fingertips. From the legend of Genghis Khan. Warm waves ebb and flow along the shoreline. This would be the final sea for the Mongols. The Adriatic Sea got its name from the ancient city of Adria. However, the city itself has long been situated on dry land, since the sea has receded several kilometers. The 3 military units, or to be more precise, what was left of them, met on the shoreline. They were pursuing the Hungarian king. When the Mongol horsemen reached the Adriatic Sea, the king boarded a ship and took refuge on one of the islands. Another Mongolian army was sent from Hungary to Vienna, supposedly to explore roads to the west. George Vernadsky, Mongols and Russia. Spring of 1242. All the treasures of Europe are at the mercy of the steppe horde. Italy, Austria, France, Germany. I am going to take your place, wrote Batu to the German king. Europe was in panic. It seemed that the Mongols would arrive any day. They were deeply fearful. Terror, fueled by the medieval propagandists of Batu Khan, paralyzed the European monarchs. They never managed to unite. And then something unusual happened. Genghis Khan's testament was broken. Psychologically, none could imagine a situation in which they would violate the testament. After all, it was a Khan established by heaven, and all that he says leads us to success, leads us to victories, leads us to the construction of our great state. Nonetheless, Batu's army turns around and withdraws. Why did the Mongols leave Europe? How did the Golden Horde appear? How did the story of the Krakow trumpeter end? Epilog, an unfinished song. The official reason for the sudden return was the news of Ogadai's death, with all the princes required to be on the election council. There are different theories. This one is due to the death of the Great Khan. There was something else related to the climate. The council took place 4 years later. Not only did Batu not attend, but he supposedly remained somewhere in Europe for another year or 2. The climate worked against him. The spring of 1242 was cold and rainy, and army supplies were hard to come by. Among the other reasons was that part of the army led by Guyuk had left, and the troops were too exhausted to be involved in long military operations. Where could new warriors be recruited? For example, when they fought a war against China, it was possible to attract local nomads and form new armies from amongst them. But in Europe there was no such opportunity. A further point is that most of the warriors were nomads. They presumably began to complain about whether it was necessary to conquer lands that were not suitable for grazing cattle. It's also possible that the campaign against Europe was conceived as a reconnaissance mission, with the main conquest expected later. Or perhaps the Mongols decided that all the testaments were fulfilled. They had reached the sea and conquered the peoples. One way or another, the result of the campaign was, in fact, the delineation of the borders of the Golden Horde, and the conquered lands became part of Jochi's domain. The entire world was being reorganized. Here is Jochi's domain. Here is Kaniv. Here is Pereyaslav, Khmelnytsky. These were the northern borders. Ancient Russia fit very conveniently into the structure of the Golden Horde and was thus adopted. After the Western Kipchak campaign, the Khan is busy arranging the capital city of Sarai Batu. New conquests are far from his mind. Batu Khan's main task was to exercise control over the territory. After an era of devastating wars, it was necessary to engage in state building. So Batu, it seems, cared more about the independence of his state. After his death in 1269, the Khans of the three nomad camps gathered on the banks of the Talas River and agreed to fight against the great Khagan if he tried to challenge their sovereignty. This date is considered to be the beginning of the Golden Horde. During Batu Khan's lifetime, the Europeans referred to his domain as Batu's encampment, the Kipchak kingdom, or the northern Tatars. The name Golden Horde came about much later in the 16th century, and this is a story of how the Kipchaks conquered the Mongols. Those lands were the lands of the Kipchaks, but when the Mongols took possession of them, they became their subjects. Then they mixed and became related to the Kipchaks, and they all became as one. Al-Umari, Voyage of the Eyes. The main territory was the steppes of southern Russia, the Volga region near the Urals. They were inhabited by Kipchaks. The unfinished melody. It is likely that this story was supposed to end somewhere in the Kipchak steppe where the campaign began, but according to another legend, it ended in Samarkand many centuries later. Once upon a time, residents of this city participated in the siege of Krakow, and a trumpeter was killed. The attackers believed that he was calling people to prayer. Genghis Khan commanded that the clergy be respected, and so a belief was born. And there will be a curse upon us until the trumpeter finishes his song. From a Samarkand legend, that in the 1940s, Soviet units were in Samarkand with Polish military musicians among them. They were approached by local elders with an unusual request to finish the melody interrupted by their ancestors. The song is alleged to have been performed in front of the mosque where another conqueror, Tamerlan, is buried.